Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 90, brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear. Today is part 4 of the DIY Report Daily Rut Log, so stay tuned. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. This is the Daily Rut Log, day number 5 here in Ohio Rut Camp with one Chad Sylvester. What's going on, man?
Oh, not too much, homie. What do you say?
I say I had a pretty decent morning, at least. I could have done without the rain, but it wasn't too bad. It let up just in time to get into the timber, so that was good.
It did. It played out. In my head, it played out better than it actually did, but that's usually the case.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I'll give my update first here, real quick, and then we'll see see if those boots were made for walking for you. So like I mentioned, there was a little bit of rain this morning, but it was nice because got in there yesterday or last evening and had to check a camera. Did of course put a little bit of scent down because of walking around just a little bit to do the things I needed to do and get a stand set and stuff like that. And so the rain actually was a little bit of a help in that regard, where I was able to kind of wash out anything that I might have left behind while I was in there. So, and the rain was stopping right around 7 o'clock, and when we got up, it started tapering off and just started becoming like more of a misty type of rain. It's more of annoying than it is a soaker. Got into the stand, got all set up. Actually pulled off my rain gear and just kind of settled for a full day set. And I think daylight was right around 7:40, 7:45, something like that today. And wouldn't you know, a buck sneaks in on me at 7:45 at 5 yards. Never heard him come in. All I could see was just it was like the one side of his rack. So I grabbed my bow, drew back, because in this spot, that I've mentioned in the past, it's pretty tight quarters. And I really only had 2 shooting lanes that were going to be an option for him. And one he was definitely going to go through. The other one he may or may not make it to, just depending on which way he breaks once he kind of crosses a little bit of brush. So if I were going to have a shot opportunity, I needed to draw and kind of be ready. So I drew, was ready. He popped out into the shooting lane, and I was able to get a better look to see who he was. And he was not one of the, I guess what I'll say is one of the quote unquote, he was a shooter, but he's not necessarily the one I was looking for. So I had to hold full draw for a lot longer than I wanted to, because then I didn't have any more breakup between he and I, and had to wait till he kind of turned his rear end toward me until I could bring my bow down. And then a couple does popped into that doe bedding area that's right below me, which is a good sign that they're continuing to use that. And that was what he was. I heard them come in early in the morning, and that was what he was sneaking in for. He was making a sneak to try to check that doe bedding area. He looked a little timid, like he was afraid that he might run into someone that might whoop his ass, which I think is a good sign for me, is that he was that he recognized that he's not the main guy on campus. So hopefully the main guy on campus shows up tomorrow.
Yeah, right on, man.
Yeah, so that was my update. The rest of the day was just a
fast start.
It was a fast start, man. So fast start with like the trail camera data, pulling those cameras, and then having good bucks on that, and then this morning have that guy. This spot, typically the mornings are good. Typically you'll get some activity. Just about every set I've ever had there, I've had activity in the morning.
So we talked a little bit last night, and a little bit this morning about stand access as far as time duration of getting set up and prepped, ready to go before shooting hours. How long were you in the stand? Like, was it like 7:40? You just sat down and then those deer come in, or was it?
I was probably in the stand for probably an hour and a half, I think.
Jeez, oh man.
Yeah, I was probably. Yeah, I mean, even though daylight broke at 7:45, technically, I mean, you could see a little bit before that, but shooting light was really around 7:40, 7:45. Because I had everything kind of preset, all I had to do was like kind of walk in, and get in the stand. And I typically like to get in early. I know you were busting me last night because of how early I like to get into the stand. And there's some days where I'll get in 2 hours early, and just have a nice dark sit. Now it's weird because I'll sometimes get like the washy head in the dark when I can't see and I don't have like any orientation like as to like where I'm at or anything like that. So sometimes I just like kind of close my eyes and wait for daylight because otherwise it starts to like mess with my head. I feel like I'm getting vertigo. So it's a little bit. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I do like to get in early because I like to let everything settle down and settle in. But it also makes for a lot longer day on the stand. And this morning it was not friendly with it being rainy, and it was also cold. Yeah, it was cold. Today was a cold and windy, which didn't help any. Yeah. But so how was your set, man?
A couple different sets actually. So I hunted that set that I hung last night. Hunted that this morning. Wasn't much happening. I went in there and pulled that card. I hung a camera over a scrape. Went in and pulled that card. There were some deer coming in. No shooter bucks. A couple does. A handful of other young bucks. And everything that I could gather from what I could see reading the sign in the area is that was really the end of that movement, like I had said earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With those deer coming out to feed, making that the end of the movement, and then working back to bed. So I tore down about 11:30, mm-hmm. and I put some miles on today.
Dude, you walk more than anybody I hunt with. I tell you that.
I wore holes in rubber boots today.
Yeah,
brand new rubber boots. They have holes in them now.
And you have wet feet more often than anybody I know.
Dude, I don't stop, man. I don't stop till it's a spot.
Yeah, I like also that you like to leave things in the woods.
Yes,
like
I'll get to that later.
Cameras.
I'll get to that later. So, didn't walk a ton. Put on about 3 miles with a stand and pack and stuff on my back, which can be tough in hill country. But followed a transition line that bordered some topography, and then also about a 70 or 80 acre cornfield. The further I went, the better it looked. Found some really good rubs, and came to an area where there were 4 or 5 trails coming, kind of at a trailhead, mm-hmm. into a creek crossing. There's a deep ditch that borders that cornfield on the east side. So with the west wind, there's only so many access points or trails those deer can use to get in and out of that cornfield. So that's where I set up. Got in there about 4 o'clock. Nice evening sit. Saw one doe right at dark. But then, to your point about leaving things in the woods, as I was setting up, I'm doing a little bit of self-filming, and I was reaching in my pack trying to get I use a GoPro for a second POV, and realized that I had left my GoPro on that other set that I sat this morning. So I'm going to take 4 sticks in probably tomorrow or some point this week.
Right.
to pull that thing out of there.
Well, it's funny because when we were hunting last year, you hung multiple stands. And so I asked you when we were driving here and we were talking, and I was like, hey, did you happen to pull all your stands from that piece of public we hunted last year in Southern Ohio? You're like, nah, man, there's still one stand I left down there in the woods. It's still there.
1 stand and 2 sections of sticks. Or ladders, I guess.
And how many cameras are still down there?
Oh, we run cameras all year.
Yeah.
There's probably 20-some cameras there.
Yeah.
Those will stay put.
Those will stay put for when we go back and tackle that again.
Yep. Absolutely.
Nice. So what's the plan for tomorrow, man?
All day, dark to dark sit on that set that I hung. That's it, man.
Cool.
It looks promising. I have conviction in it, so
cool.
See what it does.
You're gonna give it hell.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'm gonna make lunch.
Yeah, make sure you pack lunch this time. Yeah, so you have enough, so you're not hungry. My plan is to get back in that same stand because I know there's going to be deer there. There has been, every year that either myself or my buddy Tate, who you guys might hear from tomorrow, he's here looking on as we're recording. He's a voyeur this evening. He's practicing his voyeurism. But I'm going to be back in that set tomorrow. I'm hoping one of the big boys cruise by. There's no reason not for them to come by at some point.
Yep.
With the does that are in there, and the weather seems to be good this week. I think we're gonna have one day of bad weather. I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, where it's gonna be really rainy.
Tuesday's rainy,
but it'll be interesting. I was actually looking at the weather for that day, figuring out like what the plan might be. I'm projecting kind of too far in advance, but it's supposed to let up around noon. I was like, that's a good day to kind of like recharge your battery, because you always have to have one of those days in like a camp, and in our camp is like a week long, but it's like I also started last week, you know what I mean? So this is going to be 2 weeks, straight for me. And it's like, that would be a nice break to like sleep in, mentally recharge, get like a normal good breakfast, and then get into the timber right after the rain stops, or get in the timber while it's still raining. That way you're in when it stops, because that's when the deer are probably going to start moving right after that. And hopefully that time will also be scrape refreshing time, and so they should be on the move at that point. And then at the end of the week's weather looks really good, where the temps are starting to dip. Even looks like maybe a little snow on Sunday or Saturday rather.
That would be beautiful. To the point with scrapes and rain, that was kind of my hope when I hung that set last night and hung it this morning, hoping that it was 20 yards downwind of that scrape that was hit yesterday, as we talked last night or in the earlier episode. It was fresh, so I had hopes that would come back into play, but nothing during daylight. So
it's always interesting, because it's like, how often are they cycling through their scrapes? You know what I mean? It's like, because it's like he could have freshened it up that night or yesterday,
right?
And then his cycle might not bring him back for like 3 days or whatever. John and I were talking about that at one point, because he has a buck that's on a scrape pattern in Iowa, where he's getting him like every third day at this specific scrape coming through, or whatever it was.
That is the power of trail cameras.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Annual rut data. That's powerful stuff.
And we just didn't have any in this particular spot.
That's a brand new.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's a brand new.
Yesterday was the first time I had boots on the ground. We had looked at some topography features, on Onyx, but boots on the ground, that was the first.
Yeah, and this is the first year we had trail cameras up in the spot that I'm hunting too.
Yeah.
So this is all kind of new. We'll be smarter. The more often we do this at this spot particularly, we'll be smarter, just because this is to be, now that we're actually getting some additional intel other than what we're seeing while we're there.
Absolutely.
Which is, nice to have that piece of information. But so I think that's a wrap for this episode, and I hope you all are digging the rut log. It's kind of like a Yule log, but during November, during the rut instead of Christmas. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
It was a bad joke.
It was a bad joke. We're out.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. We'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you'd be able to do those 2 things for us. And before we shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Wicked Tree Gear, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Trophy Ridge, Ozonics, Obsession Bows, Tecomate Seed, Glacier Coolers, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
November's on my heels, makes me proud, makes me steal. I could show you through the door, I ain't welcome anymore. And long time coming, if it all, it takes a special knowing to color for damaged heads, broken letters. Rationalize yourself in numbers, but I